All right, here we go. All right. Looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. Seattle Mike Fights with Friends. Welcome, everybody. Today I have a former MMA fighter, former Brazilian World Champion, former Amazon bestseller, Robert Drysdale in the house, everybody. Thank you, Robert, for doing this.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so can we start, I guess? I know you already have a YouTube channel, but you're also running a new franchise of jiu-jitsu schools. I don't know if you call it a franchise, but Zenith Jui Jitsu. You have about 100 locations?
Well, we have schools worldwide. It's not a franchise, just an association, a loose association of teams that represent our team and follow our curriculum and our methods, and basically my students all over the world. About 60% of those are in Brazil, so they're really managed by the co-founder of the team, Rodrigo Cavaca. And we're going on. We'll be a decade old next year. So.
All right. Yeah, I was checking out some of your videos there, some of your knowledgeable videos there on the YouTube channel for my own knowledge. So pretty cool of you putting that stuff up there.
Thank you. I've been enjoying it. It's been fun so far. It's new. We just got started, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you've been in this game for a long time, though, as far as like jiu-jitsu and martial arts, and it's really an honor. You grew up in Brazil, is that correct?
Well, I was born in Utah. I was in Brazil from age 5 to 17, and then I was in Vegas for 2 years, and then I was in Brazil for another 8. And now I've been in Vegas for 13 years, so I've been going back and forth my whole life. This stage of my life, about 60% of my life in the U.S., 40% of it in Brazil.
Okay, very cool. So in Brazil, like I hear about it, is jiu-jitsu, is it just as major a sport as it is, as football or basketball is here?
Jiu-jitsu, no, it's actually, it started becoming popular after the UFC, actually. A lot of people don't know that, but it was a unheard of practice prior to Royce Gracie in Brazil, outside of few neighborhoods in Rio de Janeiro.
Nice. So what got you involved in it?
It's more of a calling, I guess. I've always been attracted to combat and fighting since I was a child. I had other interests as a child as well, but fighting was something that was very much in my DNA, I could say. And when jiu-jitsu started becoming popular, I saw it as something that could potentially be an identity, and I became very interested in making jiu-jitsu my identity. So it was love at first sight sort of thing. It happened very quickly, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. So I'm very, very happy. I was at the right place at the right time, so I got very as well.
Well, you've definitely been very successful at it. So, what would you say is your biggest accomplishment at this point? What would you consider your biggest accomplishment in the combat world?
Well, I'm glad you said combat world. I don't, because I would have been these days I go more towards the raising of my children more than anything. But as far as accomplishment goes, between the IBJJF, my IBJJF gi world title, and the ADCC world title. I have a lot of national titles as well. I have world titles in other belt ranks. Let me see. But I think between those two, I'm the only American to ever win both of them, the IBJJF and the ADCC. So that's the only non-Brazilian really to ever win those two tournaments. So I think that's quite significant. But it's not something I dwell on a lot. It's not something that, you can't let these things define you, otherwise you stop, right? You can't keep thinking about the past. You kind of just do it and move forward. But, just answering your question, I think those two are the most significant ones.
Yeah, it's that is a great accomplishment, though. I didn't realize you were the only non-Brazilian jiu-jitsu to win that. Non-Brazilian, to win that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know it either until someone brought it up to my attention about a year ago. And I'm like, I should probably market that. So I put it in the my book, like in the back of the book. I'm like, I should probably say something about that, because as the sport grows too, it becomes ever more compartmentalized into gi and no gi, self-defense, and MMA. So it's kind of spreading in different directions, and very few people have done all of them. So I think that's my definition of jiu-jitsu. Like, I've always wanted something that would work in every situation: street, MMA, gi, no gi. I never wanted a jiu-jitsu that would work only in one arena. I think I think that's a good goal to have. But we're moving away from that. Like, every year that goes by, we are further and further away from that goal.
Personally, coming from judo, I worry about the loss of the gi. I mean, I like the no gi competition. I know it can be more practical and stuff a lot of times, but in my opinion, and you can let me know what you think about this, like on the street, especially if somebody's wearing baggy clothing, a hoodie or different things that are on the street, it seems like that gi training maybe even maybe is more valuable on the street with somebody with a lot of clothing and stuff on than it might be in an MMA match.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I recommend, but for self-defense purposes, you should be ready for both. I don't understand when people say, like, oh, no one's going to be wearing a gi walking down the street. Like, no one's going to be wearing a rash guard either. So it's just really one of those things where, people have preferences, and I think that's normal. But as far as self-defense goes, you should be ready for both. I do think that, you can benefit. But you know what, man? At the end of the day, I think very few people do martial arts for self-defense. That's what they say. I think people do martial arts for, identity, place to belong, new friends, workout, like the endorphins, all those things. I think self-defense is just a reason to get you through the door. Very few people stay for that reason only, because it's too much work just for that reason. It's just way too much work. Yeah.
No, I completely agree, or at least, on my experience, that's why I got into it to begin with. Probably like a lot of kids, I was picked on a lot, so I got tired of being picked on, so that's basically why I started getting into judo and striking, little inspiration from Bruce Lee and some other things. But, I mean, as practical, I did a lot of loss prevention, and I will say I was able to, detain people without hurting them. That was what I got from judo and jiu-jitsu, is I could use their clothing, and I could detain someone very, very easily, especially if they're trying to run away without injuring someone.
Yeah. I think it's a good way.
Ordinary Pete says, this is Nito. Hey, thank you to everybody out in the chat there. Make sure that you subscribe to Robert Drysdale's YouTube channel. I'll have a link up to that later in the description when I edit it. But this is a fairly new channel. I see you're over the 1,000 subscribers, so.
Yeah, we just reached that 1,000 mark. And I don't know how this works. I have a team that does everything. I don't know anything about anything. So they know what they're doing. All I know is that they know what they're doing. I don't.
That's probably the best way to do it. If I had somebody that would have known what they were doing, I would probably be well over my 6,300 subscribers in 4 years. But I'm just a monkey. Somebody said it the other day. I think I'm just a monkey with a phone flying through space. I don't know.
That sounds like me.
But practically, like as far as teaching, how often are you teaching now?
I teach every day, actually. Every day I might skip a day. It's for whatever reason something happens. But for the most part, I'm in the gym every day. I teach at least one class a day.
Okay, and I think a lot of people, especially when you get into, and I'm not going to diss on other arts in the United States and stuff. You'll know what I'm talking about. Sometimes black belts, they're obviously not all created equally, but when you get to a degree of like 4th degree black belt, that's like stacking. Every degree is basically like getting another black belt, right? That's a super high level.
Yeah, it is a thing. It's a problematic system too, because you can be sitting on the couch and get striped. You know, you can sit on the couch for 3 years and get the stripe. It's not contingent on work or effort or merit. It is contingent on time and time only. I think it's a very problematic system. You know, we saw this in Brazil. People that hadn't put a black belt on and were in a gi for a decade, they come back a decade later and they won 3 stripes. You know, and that happened a lot. You know, and then they were being, and it's very common. Like in all martial, I don't know other martial arts, but I guess it's also time contingent on when it comes to stripes after the black belt. But it's a very problematic system. To be frank, I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's been a lot of people in martial arts throughout it. I mean, I don't even, I don't think Bruce Lee, towards the end of his life, was really doing much with belts. He's like, it's good to hold your pants up. So
yeah, it means less and less over time. That's for sure. Like I always say this, it's what you learn along the way that you carry with you. That's your real treasure. You know, everything just collects dust and it's just an ornament.
I've been asking fighters recently, and I want to know what you think about I don't know if you want to call it the gentrification of combat sports or what's going on, but you got these guys like Jake Paul and Logan Paul, and they're jumping out there, these YouTubers, and they're making a ton of money, and it really has upset a lot of people that have been in MMA for years and are really talented and things. And have you given that much thought?
Yeah, a lot actually, and I've been calling the problem for at least a decade. I've been saying this is just a culmination of something that started a long time ago, and it's a much bigger problem. It has nothing to do with martial arts. In fact, it's a world phenomenon. It has to do with social media, the internet, and perhaps democratization of information, which has actually made things worse, not better, surprisingly. We lost notion of rank. There's no more rank in the world. There's no more specialty. Everyone's a specialist. You know, everyone's famous for being famous. You get people who never ran a business running seminars on how to run a business. You get people who never fought, teaching people how to fight. There's no more sense of hierarchy and merit in the world. Like, we associate popularity with merit. So if you're popular and you market yourself well, that's all you have to do. Being in the gym twice. So Floyd Mayweather had to become the greatest boxer in history to earn that spot, right? Logan Paul was 0-1, and he had to be a YouTuber to earn the other counter spot, right? The other side, to be in that ring. So the message you're sending to children is, don't kill yourself in the gym your whole life. That's way too hard. Become a YouTuber instead, and the end result is the same. And they would be right in doing so, because if the purpose is to make money, then they would be correct in that strategy, because that's a much easier route. And it doesn't require the amount of, not only effort, but also of talent, I personally feel like. It requires you being obnoxious, and that is entertaining in the same way that a car accident may be entertaining to some people, but it's not building anything. You're not improving on yourself or people around you or on the overall culture for that matter. It is, in fact, the opposite. But I think the short-term solution to that is, I don't think there is one actually, but long-term, I think I have some less and less hope as I get older. My hope towards humanity is smaller and smaller, but I think at some point humanity will snap out of it and realize this is a waste of our time and there are more important things. But the issue of merit needs to be brought back into the picture. Again, I think that's what allows the Jake Pauls of the world to thrive, is that there's no more sense of hierarchy in the world.
I'm glad that you said that, and I think you said that very well. And I was talking to my kids actually the other day about culture and community, and I think that's two things that the dojo and martial arts have always done pretty well. But yeah, the rest of the outside world, not so much. And I think you got a real finger on the pulse, putting a lot of the credit on that towards social media. And just if more people would just get into martial arts classes and get their kids young into martial arts classes, maybe that's the best start.
But the martial arts is being corrupt for the same reasons. Yeah, I mean, like Jake Paul is a prime example. Like, martial arts is the last bastion of against the culture of mediocrity. I saw a comedian the other day say that comedy was the last bastion of free speech in America, and I agreed. I laughed. I think that's so true. It's about the only place in this country where you can speak the truth without going to being canceled or being hated on or whatever, right? It's a very unique place, and thank God for comedians. But when it comes to martial arts, I think martial arts is the last bastion of a culture of strength, of a culture of, you know, of metal and strife and struggle and improvement. But, you know, the economics of it are killing it too, because you drag money into it and it corrupts everything. So all of a sudden, you know, you're under pressure to promote your students faster, because if you don't, the gym across the street will. Right, and these things count, and that grows their following, that grows their finances, it grows their popularity, and that is a snowball effect, right? So, in other words, the more you corrupt yourself, the bigger the rewards. And what the internet has done is expanded that like it tremendously. So now it just compounds on itself, like a snowball effect. So like the more, the less truthful you are to the art, the more you're rewarded. And we should be trying to build a world that, you know, creates the opposite. It's a very, very strange dynamic. And I don't see, like I said, I don't see a short-term solution to this, but I think long-term, you know, people will snap out of it. If they don't, shit, man, I don't know what's next, because it's gotten crazy already. It's already, the fighting is just like a small, martial arts is just like a small demonstration. It's like a small picture of a much, much bigger global phenom.
No, I completely agree there. And I think discipline is just going to have to become a trend again. And some of these kids, it's like, I hate to say it, it's like they think, oh, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, you know, 6-7 days a week, like some people do. Oh, you guys are fools. And monetarily, unfortunately, recently, you know, some of that is has kind of come home to roost. But yeah, I hope we can get on the other side of that.
You know when it started? When we started giving medals to children for losing.
That's a very good example.
Because children can't cry, right? Children can't suffer. You got to prevent any kind of suffering. Oh, he's going to feel bad. Oh, you know what? Let's give everyone a C instead of having some kids have A's and, you know, get a D. Like, let's give everyone a C instead, so everyone's happy at the end, right? And you create this culture of mediocrity, and it's supposed to be better because everyone's going to be happy. But are we happier? Like, we've never been so depressed. We've never been so sad. We've never been so anxious. Suicide rates are through the roof. It's just the richest country in history, and the suicide is just skyrocketing. Are we doing better? Are we more comfortable? Are we happier? Like, we're not, right? And the idea that making this so much easier for people is going to make them feel better and happier is self-defeating. It's the opposite. It's making it hard that's going to make you happy. It is precisely because it's hard to get a black belt that it is valuable. If you bought one in the mail or on Amazon, you're not going to get any sense of fulfillment from that. But if you earn it after 10 years on the mats, that right there is something to carry with you 24/7 everywhere you go. Like, that's the kind of happiness and sense of self-fulfillment that I'm interested in. But we're not. It's changed, you know, in a very strange way, and it is affecting martial arts. Even though what a very strong bastion of even more than jiu-jitsu and MMA is wrestling. So I admire wrestling so much, because in wrestling it doesn't matter what you think. The coach is the boss. There's hierarchy in there, and if you don't like it, because it's government funded, right? So it's a different economic dynamic. So they go, oh, you don't like it? I'll get off the team, then I'll bring someone else in. So they are able to create a culture of greatness, and the fact that wrestlers do so well in MMA, I think, is somewhat, not only reason, but is a reflex of that culture of merit. Like, you have to earn your spot on the team. You can't buy your spot on the team. So wrestling's been very immune to all of this over the years, and that's one reason why I think wrestling has incredible culture. Like, I hope they keep it that way. I hope it never changes.
I 100% agree. I was in wrestling, and I actually had my daughter was actually a wrestler, and she was a straight A student. She did a lot of things, in a lot of different, that got her a lot of scholarships in college and stuff. But the thing that helped her, I think, in everything was the discipline of wrestling. And yeah, that head coach, that was a person she looked up to, probably above anyone. And yeah, I don't think she'd be where she is. She's off to a pretty good start. I'm really proud of her at 19 years old. But yeah, if it wasn't for wrestling, I don't know if any of that comes to fruition.
Yeah, and it's a culture of struggle. It's a culture of it's hard. wrestling is extremely hard. I think every child should wrestle, like men, boys and girls, by the way. Like I think everyone should go through that, especially in the country, United States, where you have access to it. You know, like if you, I grew up in Brazil as a child, so for me, I didn't have access to wrestling, but I wish I did. I would have jumped at that. Like that would have been my thing. I know it. It is just, you know, it's like, you know, you see parents trying to protect their kids from like, oh, he's gonna fall and break an arm, he's gonna lose, and he's gonna cry. And I'm like, that is awful parenting. When I see that, I feel sorry for the child. Like you're preventing the child from growing. You're preventing them from developing. Like you think you're helping when you're sheltering your child all the time. You're being a terrible parent. Like really, I really believe that. Like I think that you're being an awful parent when you're preventing your child from going through any kind of suffering. Like way to prepare them for the real world, right? And then you grow up with a generation of entitled little shits who wants everything handed to them, who want to get rich off of Bitcoin and work smart, not hard, and I'm an entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. And I'm an influencer. I don't know how to do anything. And then that's the generation we've created. Like we've created a generation of people that don't know. And is that long term? Is that desirable to humanity? Because that's something that is going to the world better. Or the person themselves, like, do they benefit from that? From making easy money? Is that desirable for the person? I don't believe so. People who are born rich struggle more than people who are born in poverty in some ways because they have less to look forward to. Like, you know, if I hand you a black belt, there's no sense of merit. And that's a satisfaction that I think is it far outdoes the pleasure of being handed something easy. You know, there's a rank in terms of satisfaction here too that is not being considered. You know, I think that earning something is the ultimate kind of feeling. You know, that's the kind of feeling you want to have. You don't want to have anything less than that.
Well, thank you for so much for saying that so eloquently too. So many people are afraid to speak out against a lot of this, what's going on in culture, and I really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to just be blunt on those kinds of things. I think that's what it's going to take to turn us around. Is a lot more people just calling things for what it is. I think too many people are seeing one thing and they're calling it something else, and yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah. I will say this though, don't. Every time I open my mouth, I start a controversy. Like, I'm not sure, and I get like 5,000 people hating on me, so I'm not sure it is the best strat. I honestly don't know, because if you can't, we're living in a time where if you speak the truth. I had an exchange recently, the last few days actually, where I gave some non-controversial facts about jiu-jitsu. Oh my God, you'd be surprised on how many hate messages I received, how many people were writing me. Because I'm just spitting some truth. And they are things that I can back up. They're not matters of opinion. They're matters of fact. And, you'd be shocked. You know, it's just one of those things. So, like, is it even worth it? Because it's not making your life better or easier when you say these things. But it doesn't matter. Objective reality doesn't matter. What matters is what the public perceives. And the public is, surprisingly, the more information they're given, the less able they are to filter and analyze that information. So they're skipping. They don't have that ability. They just lack it completely. But they're being bombarded with information nonstop, and opinions are formed very, very quickly with very little thought. You know, and it's almost like thinking is almost like to your detriment. You know, because you go. Now, or speaking is because you're up against a forum of stupidity, and I feel bad saying this, but that's what the internet has become.
Oh, I think I might steal that phrase, a forum of stupidity, because I think there's just so much information and misinformation thrown at us, and whether it's purposeful or not, I won't go down a huge rabbit hole, but I mean, nobody can keep up with it all. You're just being bombarded with so much stuff. Then you got to think about what's important. And it's like somebody said to me the other day, a very important issue in my mind was the strife of the people in Hong Kong. And I know I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the people in Hong Kong, fighting against the occupation in China. And people were like, okay, you got hit with, all these different facts and stuff. But who's even talking about that right now? Very few people. But it didn't stop happening.
Yeah. And I think the real issue here is, I remember a student of mine said a while ago, he goes like this, Rob, why'd you read so many history books? Just Google it. So all you got to do is Google it, right?
Wow.
And now, like, whoa, that's what we're dealing with here. People, like, they don't believe in thinking anymore. They believe in that Google is the knowledge you need, that you don't need to learn how to think. It's learning how to think, because I already know how to think. But the thing is, the more you think, the more you realize you don't know how to think. And that's what's scary. They call it the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like the less you know about something, the more confident you are. But I think that happens at psychological level too, where you go, I am very, very informed, and I know how to think, and I'm a critical thinker. And then the more you think about the issues, the more you flaws in your own thinking you see, and the less of a critical thinker you believe you are, even though you are getting better, but you don't believe you are. It's a very strange effect. But it's the overconfidence that's terrifying, man. Like, I actually think this is a much bigger problem where it'll be in martial arts. Like, COVID exposed a side of that it's like, I mean, I saw people fighting over toilet paper. People were on the verge of a civil war in this country over toilet paper. And that COVID was not that hurtful in the way a war or a Great Depression would be, right? Like, but I mean, you saw people were fighting over toilet paper. It's scary, actually.
Oh, yeah. I work in the grocery industry. That's what I do for a full-time job. I'm an independent distributor. So, yeah, I'm like, I've been working 6 to 7 days a week throughout this whole thing around all these people. And it's like, I could argue a lot of things, but it's like, are you going to tell me it's better for my health that I've been masking and, cutting off my oxygen for 8 to 10 hours, 7 days a week, than to just worry about freaking getting COVID?
Yeah.
It's like... That doesn't make sense to me, but yeah, I think that has been overblown for sure.
Yeah, well, to each their own, man. Like, no one's, you can only do so much. So everyone does as much as they can. And like I talk about these issues whenever the opportunity arises, because I think people should be aware of them. But it's a much bigger problem. Like, it's pretty deeply seated and not well beyond the internet. In fact, I think it's an old problem, but the internet has just compounded it. It just made it more evident, I suppose.
Yeah, and I know you're limited on time and you have to go here in a little while, but I did want to touch back real quick on, like I was talking about Logan Paul, and I think it was Paulo Costa that brought it to Dana White's attention. He was talking about pay, and Dana White, I don't know if there is a right answer to this, but he comes out and says, maybe you should have started a YouTube channel when you were 14. I was like, what are you doing? I want to slap you right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's become, I guess, it's the reward is always the fame and the money. That's the ultimate goal. And when you have that, it's funny. I was I'm doing some research for a new book, right? And I've been digging into the ancient Greek history and how the culture of fighting developed, right? They had a name for it, the culture of struggle, agon. And there's a historian called Jacob Burckhardt, and he associates the rise of popularity in these fights and contests also as a form of decay. Like, that's when they start falling, because popularity became an end in itself. And some people were so desperate they couldn't achieve what some of the greats were achieving in the arena. So they became so desperate for attention that they would set burnt buildings on fire just to draw attention on themselves.
Wow.
Right. And I think, and then he associates that with the decay of the greatest period in Greek history, which was the culture of competition. But once, people started seeing the fame as a means to an end, or an end in itself, right? Then they would set buildings on fire just to draw popularity on themselves. And that's when you see the decline of greatness. I thought it was very, very similar to what we're experiencing today. Like, there's so many similarities. Yeah, like it's anything is valid as long as at the end, like you can be Pablo Escobar.
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want. Everything is valid as long as at the end you make. Like, I'm not saying I'm an angel here, but but at some point we got to go. Wait a second, guys. Is that really what world we're trying to build here? Like, is that really what's best? Is that really what you want, the world you want your children to live in? Like, should we think 50 years ahead, or should we only think 5 minutes ahead?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy, and I mean, not to pick on the Paul brothers. If I was in the same situation, come back to this, and I could make all that money, I mean, who knows what I would do? But your analogy of throwing gasoline and just kind of lighting everything on fire. I mean, there's some days I wake up, and that's kind of how I feel about like boxing specifically right now. I kind of feel like we're kind of just dousing it with gasoline and lighting it on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, you're not gonna. How does that Billy Joel song go? Like, we didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. That's what I tell myself. That's how I make my pieces, like playing that car and that music in my car every other day. It's like, okay, it's always been burning. Like, I'm not responsible for it.
Well, I was glad to hear you say that you didn't do much social media, yourself. You have other people that run that, and I've been trying to spend less time on it because I do think it's kind of a poison for your mind. And
it has its positives. Like, we connected through social media, so there's that, right? People are watching it through social media. But again, like, if I look at my screen time, I average like 2 hours a day. 2 hours out of my life every day. Just doing what? Like, wasting time, and you're not really accomplishing anything, right? It's not making you better. It's making you worse. But what are you gonna do? I'm doing less and less. I'm actually handing a lot of it over so I can free up my time for other projects. But I do think that for you to be productive, you have to get off social media. I strongly believe that. Unless that's what you do for your job. Your job is to do some on social media. I think everyone else should be off and just be more productive.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice for some people. Do you do meditation or a lot of like sauna time or anything outside of MMA to kind of release some of the stress of the world?
I'm too lazy for yoga. Yoga is like too hard for relaxing and too easy for a workout. It's like right in between, I feel like. So, but yoga is great. I should do it. I don't. But it's good for I'm all beat up. I got 2 herniated discs. I got arthritis all over. I'm all beat up. So I need yoga. Yeah, man. It's I don't meditate. No, my meditation is walking when I'm with my dog. I have my thoughts and I go in my rabbit holes, or when I'm just laying in bed before I go to sleep. I do meditate my own way, but not in the lotus position. I'm not very. I'm just more in my living in my head most of the time.
Yeah, I think everybody has their own way of kind of removing themselves from those things. And I gotta say, I'm sorry, coming from who I consider one of the greatest jiu-jitsu players ever, to hear you say you're lazy is pretty hilarious. If that's lazy, I strive to be lazy, my friend. But I know you have a prior engagement, so I know you don't have a whole lot of time. But thank you so much for sharing your time and giving us time here. It's been a great interview. Did you want to talk about your book or anything else you have going on right now?
Yeah, we got a documentary coming out. We're working on it. You got some news some things to announce soon. The book is called Opening Closed Guard. It's the story behind the documentary. It's available on our website, closedguardfilm.com. And if you're ever in Las Vegas and you train, or you would like to start training, stop by the gym, Drysdale Jiu Jitsu. Everyone's welcome. And everyone's welcome to my gym. And I had a good time, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, I know we got some viewers in Las Vegas, so definitely take that opportunity. If you get a chance to come and train with these guys, definitely make sure and do that. Hey, thank you very much for your time. Again, I appreciate it, and thank you to Ian Brewster for hooking us up.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, man, Michael, and you have a good one, man. Have a good Sunday.
All right, you too. Thank you very much, Robert. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Robert Drysdale, everybody. I'm Seattle Mike for Fights with Friends. Happy Father's Day, everyone. And as always, I love you. I respect you. And I'll see your fine asses next time.